Welcome everyone to this Cortado Cuppa Coffee Podcast with me, your host, Tom Dillon. This has been recorded live at our Tim Pot mobile studio and broadcast around the world. Today's topic is, I think one of my tenants tried to bypass the electric meter and all the things that we learned from that. Not snappy, I grant you, but it does give a fairly strong description of what happened and what I'm going to talk about. Now some people will have switched off already, and thanks for coming along if that's you, because for various reasons. One of them will be people who say, well, I've got a letting agent to look after my property or properties, and so this isn't relevant to me. I'd say yes it is, sir, stroke madam, because you should be checking that your letting agent is looking after things, and whether you choose this or something else, it's your responsibility to make sure that things are being well run. I'll give you an example. That me and the wife rented a property from a large agency, and the one time we'd been there like 3 years, and the one time they needed the key, we were away, there was a small leak, they needed to get in, they didn't have the key. And that's pretty basic stuff. You know, if you're thinking about letting agency 101, have you got the keys for this place? Would be fairly close to the top of that list, and they didn't. And that's a company that has many, many thousands of properties that they manage. So, so whether you self-manage or have someone else manage for you, I think that what I've got to say here is relevant, but you decide. What I would say is, if you tune into this podcast for how to make £1 million in a week, first of all, it's probably not the right podcast for you anyway, but second of all, this is more on the management side than the investment side, so then this one probably isn't for you, and you probably should jog on with our thanks. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened to me in my situation, and then more importantly, I think, what you can learn from it. So my plumber was at a property doing some small works, leak or something, and as part of that he had to flick off some of the fuses to make sure it was safe, and he saw that while he's not an electrician, the fuse box looked a bit off to him, looked a bit wrong, so he sent me some photos which I forwarded to my electrician, and my electrician said, yeah, that looks very much like it's been tampered with, and possibly the meter's been bypassed. So I then had an interesting think or dilemma about what to do about it, because it's not something that's come up before. So the first one was, who do you ring, or do you ring anybody? You know, what do you do? After a bit of research and a bit of Googling, it seemed like my options were to call the police, but because, as I'll come on to a little bit more later, it's bypassing energy theft, bypassing meters is a crime, but you need to prove that. And if you phone 999, for example, I think I'm right in saying that one of the emergency number in the UK, one of the questions they ask you is there a crime in progress now? And the answer to that would be no, I don't think so, but I'm not sure, I'm not at the house. So I thought the police could be a bit overkill, and it would have proved to be, as well, as we'll see in a second. I thought the other option was the electricity distribution network operator, which is a fancy name for, in the northwest of England, Electricity Northwest, which again is not very snappily titled, but that's another option was. And I also thought, well, what do I communicate with the tenant? Because you still need permission to get access unless there's an actual ongoing emergency, at which point you can get access. I should probably say at the start, but I got too excited, that none of this constitutes advice of any sort. You should have to make your own decisions, but I'm here talking about what I decided to do, and you can make your own judgments. But I think more importantly, you can see, or start to see, this is a little bit complicated. It's not immediately obvious. So what did I decide to do? Well, in the end, there's probably other options I haven't talked about, but those seem like the main ones. Do nothing, I suppose, was one option, but that didn't seem like a very good one. So I called Electricity Northwest. They attended the following day and said that when they attended, it was not currently bypassed. That it looked like, again, it had been tampered with, and they recommended I send my own electrician to check it was safe and make it extra safe. They use various tamper-proof tapes, I think, to help with that, or at least to let you know when it's been tampered with. And that's, of course, what I did. It may have been that of course, I had to tell the tenant Electricity North West were attending. It may have been that it was bypassed and then they unbypassed it, or put it right, or got someone else to do that on their behalf. So, but that's all conjecture. That may have happened. It seems possible, or maybe even likely, but I have no proof of that either way. Okay, so that's what happened to me, and then that's kind of the end of it. At least one hopes so. Well, the end of it. It's not maybe the end of it, but it's certainly the story. Okay, so what can you learn from this to be better at what we do? To be better at the management, or to get people to be better at the management on our behalf? Well, I've grouped it into 4 things, all of which thankfully are very quick. Number 1 is make sure your systems and paperwork are in check, or your letting agent's systems and paperwork. One of the main ways to catch something like this, this isn't how it happened in my case, but one of the main ways to catch this sort of thing is via routine annual inspections, is to make sure that your annual inspections include checking the gas and electric meters. There's a very useful list of what to look for. I'm sure there's other ones, but the one I found was on an excellent website, I think, called stayenergysafe.co.uk. And I'll put a link to the particular page on there, which talks about how to spot energy theft. There's all kinds of things on here, but I'll just run through a few of the things that you can look for, or that someone can look for on your behalf, that will help you to spot it. So, focusing on electricity, because that's what happened to me. There's stuff on here for gas as well. Number 1, damaged meter casing. Number 2, extra wires around the meter. Number 3, melted or scorched meter casing. Number 4, electricity working with no credit. Number 5, meter dials or digits not moving. And number 6, burning smell near the meter. So those are 6 easy ones to spot for. As I say, I'll link that with the podcast. So, and then a bit more on paperwork is, so make sure that, as well as your routine annual inspections, your paperwork in general is in order. So there should be some sort of system. There's all different ones, but some sort of system that for each property you have a document or some way of noting events and incidents that happen, and details around that, so that you can not only keep a track of what's going on, but then when you're looking back, you can show that you were aware of what was happening and that actions were taken. So, for example, if someone said to me, "Well, actually, you found out about this this potential electricity theft. What did you do about it?" And you can answer that question with some details and with some confidence and with some dates. Even basic things like, I got an incident number from Electricity North West. Well, where's that noted? In a place that you're going to be able to find it, possibly in a hurry later on. So things like that. So if you've got letting agents managing your property, one thing I might ask is, with regards to property X, is what was the last incident that happened there, or the last thing that happened at the property, or can I see the records for property X and what's been going on there? And if they can't provide it, find out why not, or how they store that information. Second thing I learned is that it's taken quite seriously by the powers that be, and I think that's a good thing. I think it should be. I think it's very dangerous. For anyone who's new to landlording or new to running a house, like, why is it dangerous? A house or flat. Why is it dangerous? Well, if you, in order to steal energy, the stealing part isn't that important for me. It's important for the energy companies, because if everyone stole it, they wouldn't make any money. They've got a business. But what's important for the likes of me and you as landlords isn't so much the theft. It's what you need to do to achieve the theft. And what you need to do to achieve the theft is bypass lots of the meter, and therefore very often lots of the safety features of the system. So the reason there are, touch wood, thankfully, very few property fires in the UK and most of the developed world is because of, at least in part, because of the safety mechanisms that are in place. And if you in order to bypass the meter, you bypass a lot of those safety features, and therefore massively increase the potential risk for something going wrong. Okay, so it's taken seriously. If you go back, I'll reference that website again, stayenergysafe.co.uk, which seems to be a government website where, a bit like Crime Stoppers, if you know about that, which is where you can anonymously report crime. This is where you can anonymously report energy theft. That wasn't the reason for me to use the website. I didn't need to be anonymous, otherwise I wouldn't be making a video about it with my face on. But what I did find was it was a useful website with lots of interesting information, even some case studies of when things go wrong. and there's a phone number to ring and all kinds of useful stuff like that. So I thought it was good. It also taught me that there's a maximum penalty for energy theft of 5 years in jail. So that's worth avoiding, as well as some fines. There's also an emergency 105 emergency helpline, which is if you dial 105 from anywhere in the UK, and then follow the options. Your call gets answered quite quickly, 24 hours a day, and they'll come and help out, depending what, of course, exactly the details of what's going on. So that's the second thing that I learned, is that it's taken seriously, and I'm glad that it is. Third thing I learned is that under Section 8 of some act or other, but Section 8 is, for any landlords here, you'll know that Section 8 is very often what landlords or agents will use to evict tenants who are in arrears. There's different sections to that act, I learned after speaking to the NRLA, National Residential Landlords Association, of who I'm a big fan. And there's various grounds under that, which I was less aware of. For example, ground 7A and ground 14. If you remember the NRLA, you can log in and check those grounds out. You might be able to find it on Google. Ground 14, for example, says, this ground is used in cases of antisocial behaviour committed by the tenant or any other person living with the tenant or visiting the property, if that person has been guilty of conduct causing or likely to cause a nuisance or annoyance to a person residing, visiting, or otherwise engaging in a lawful activity in the locality, or has been convicted of using the dwelling house or allowing it to be used for immoral or illegal purposes, etc., etc. And that, as we can all agree, is fairly boring. What's interesting is that those grounds, in some cases, can give you a 24, rather than having to give 2 weeks notice to the tenant, can give you a 24-hour notice for eviction, which is the shortest I've ever come across. So I wasn't aware of that. You might have been, but I wasn't. The only downside is, before you get too excited, first of all, it's, no one's excited by evicting people, by the way, but we are excited about making sure our properties are safe. But it is that it's quite difficult to get them. Even the list here, even the document I've got here, says regards ground 7A, landlords also face a number of difficulties in establishing conditions 1 to 4 have occurred. Given this, the ground is unlikely to be relied upon unless a closure order of 48 hours or more is in place. Long story short, it's difficult to get those grounds proved or proven, and therefore difficult to use those, difficult to therefore get access to a 24-hour notice order, which is a shame, but kind of interesting to know about. And if you are facing a cut and dried case where the energy theft has been proven to have taken place, it's worth being aware of that might be something that's open to you, and I wasn't before. So there you go, something that I've learned. And then lastly, the fourth thing that I learned, and hopefully will be useful for others, is deciding what to do afterwards, or making the decisions on this isn't easy. So it's worth maybe having to think about in advance. In my case, for example, we've got a case where nothing's been proven that it's not been proved that the tenant misbehaved in any way. However, it seems very likely that they or someone they asked, or a friend or whoever, has at least tampered with the meter. So what do you do? Because I don't have there's no criminal act taken place, I've been proven to have taken place, so I don't have access to any of those notices. So and the tenant isn't in arrears in this case. So the only notice I've got access to is a 2-month notice. But of course, I don't have to serve that. We could choose to continue with the tenancy and maybe re-educate the tenants. But then what's to stop them doing the same thing again if they've done it before? And those kind of decisions. Also, what do you do to make sure that the place remains safe? Like, what do you need to do? Increase checks. We have a security company on our books, and we made sure when we found out about this that the security company went to do inspections overnight to make sure everything was safe. But do those need to carry on, and if so, at what cost? So, some interesting decisions to make afterwards, and I found them to be difficult. Is this common? Well, I spoke to 2 friends of mine who manage many more properties than I do, and both of them said they'd never come across it before. They had systems in place in case it did, but they've never actually had to use those systems. So it doesn't seem to be that common. However, what I'd say is, first of all, it did happen to me, and second of all, I think this is likely to become more rather than less common, given that given that the cost of living crisis and energy crisis mean that people are struggling, have been struggling, and probably will continue to struggle as that bites to make ends meet. And if you or anyone, I were faced with a situation where someone offers you to do that down at the pub or wherever to maybe make your energy cheaper or free, and you're really struggling to make ends meet, clearly that might be a tempting proposition. To be really clear, in case that does happen to you or someone you know, strongly recommend not doing it, because it's as I've said, really can put people in danger, and that's no fun at all. I think that's it for today. Hope that's been vaguely useful. We'd welcome feedback on these Cortados, whether people are getting value out of them, these shorter form podcasts or not. And see you in the next one.